now for this afternoon's program. I was very surprised to learn, first off, that in this very relatively small and historic town, there are over 200 homes which fit the designation of antiquity, antique. There are homes of antique vintage. We find that classification and data collection about these homes and the families that have occupied them actually date back more than 100 years, as carried out by several different persons. Now today our guest speaker is the familiar Bill Whiting, a longtime member of our society and chairman of the town's Cable TV Advisory Committee. You've undoubtedly seen him conducting his video filmings, along with Renee, his colleague, in the past few years, which are then rebroadcast on our local TV channels 10 and 47. Bill's main purpose at this time is to give us an up-to-date account of this collection of antique homes and their occupants using the latest computer technology. A new way of looking at these locations. Looks like a very impressive project that we should enjoy. Thank you very much, and now I'll turn the podium over to Bill.
You might want to come up and take a look at some of the displays. One of the things we'll be talking about are old maps of town, and this is an example of it. It's really from right in the middle of town. We put this together several years ago, trying to give you a view of what Topsfield looked like. But in this corner is actually the binder. There are 6 or 8 very large maps that cover the entire town, show every structure in town, and that's the basis of a lot of what we're going to be talking about. Well, this program is going to be a lot different than what you usually get when you come here. You usually hear about a historical event in the past, you know, the Titanic sank or something blew up. We're going to talk about something that's a future event, which is a little change from the past. The project is to make Topsfield history available to the public. Specifically, we want to deliver information from many sources in many formats about Topsfield's homes built before 1925 and the people who lived in those homes before 1900. Many families trace their roots back to Topsfield. If we can establish genealogical information about Topsfield families from the late 1600s to 1900, we'll have a unique historical resource that I call Topsfield's Gene Pool. Now, my wife reminded me that I tend to give people more information than they really want. And that will probably happen this afternoon. But I'm trying to make 4 points. And I thought by presenting lots of different information, I may be able to hit on those 4 points. 1, over the years, many people have collected and cataloged Topsfield historical information. And I've been amazed to find that an awful lot of that is already in digital format. 2, the challenge is to know where that information is and if there's related information available. 3, the technology needed to manage and share this information exists. And 4, something we learned on the internet, as we make data available and people share information of common interest, the information becomes more complete and more accurate. And I'll show you why that happens. So please forgive me for my data overload approach to sharing information. And I hope that everyone can find something of interest in this presentation. This is really a collaborative town process. Historical Society, Historical Commission, Town Library, the Assessor's Office, the Town Mapping Committee, which many of you may not even know exists. All of these groups are working together on this project. The Topsfield Historical Society collects, preserves, and makes available to those interested in local history select archives, artifacts, and books relating to the history of the town of Topsfield. Now, I know all of you know that the Historical Society owns the Parson Capen House, and what a unique structure that is. But I'm not sure everybody has been through it and knows that it's really quite an impressive museum. You obviously are aware of the Gould Barn, and we built this for several different reasons. One was for a rental site, and we're getting our major revenue stream from that. It's also sort of an extension of the Cape and House Museum. But many of you probably have never been in the back room, and that's a climate-controlled document storage facility that we built to better protect the town's historical records. The Records Committee of a generation ago actually cataloged and put into a computer, if you can believe this, thousands of pages of archives. Now, it's not in as a digital image, but it's cataloged, and it says, these are the words that describe the information in this package. And thanks to Carl Porter, who did some really amazing data manipulation, we took all of that information that had been collected years and years ago and brought that into this new computer system. Usually, that's the stumbling block for historical societies. How do you sit down and key in the thousands and thousands of keystrokes to get information there? We got our information in because somebody had created a file, and Carl was able to transport that file into Past Perfect. So the current Historical Records Committee, when we tried to lay out our strategies, we focused on our key resources. What's really unique about the information that we have? And we decided that it was genealogical information of Topsfield families and our collection of local images. So the project that we're trying to kick off will document some 250 Topsfield homes built before 1925. And we say document, that means collect as much information as you can. Documents, images, almost any format of information. We want to provide genealogical data on the people living in those homes up till about 1900. Things got not interesting after 1900. Right? No interesting people moved to town after 1900. We want to collect all types of information. And you'll see that can even include things like audio, video. You now are using computers to manage this information. And the biggest thing, we want to make that information available. Not only to people who come to Topsfield, but people who are living anywhere in the world. Sort of big objectives. We're using this product called Past Perfect software. It's specifically designed for museums and historical societies. It actually covers every function that an organization needs, from membership to fundraising to data collection. We're really using it just to manage our collections and to make the information available to the public. Now, the Historical Society has a long history of publishing historical reference information. And the most important one is probably Dow's book, going back to 1940. You may also know that periodically over the history of the organization, we've published 34 volumes of the historical collections. And the historical collections may come every 5 or 10 years, and they really try to say what's happened in Topsfield since the last one. And if you look across that couple hundred years of documentation, there's a tremendous amount of information stored in those collections. Well, this happens to be the collection number 8, and this gives you an idea of the kinds of topics that are in the historical collection. There was a book published by Town on houses and buildings of Topsfield, the fires in Topsfield, story about the Smith family, the Boardman family, vital statistics, events. So this is an example of what the historical collections published. This is one of the few copies I've ever found of Town's book. So this is published in 1902. It talked about 225 homes that were built before his time, before 1900, and it has descriptions of the houses and people. You probably know the J. Lawrence Bond book. This is really an update of Town's book. It was published in 1989. Bond actually brought in another couple of hundred homes, so he's documented every home before 1950, and he continued the descriptions of the house and people up until 1980. Now, it's difficult to understand the value of this, but we have digital copies of all that information. So as soon as you have a digital copy of a book, not only can you share it and reuse it, but you can search it. Every word in that book now becomes searchable. The same thing is beginning to happen with a historical collection. You may know that Google and some other firms are in the process of scanning and putting up on the internet literally millions of books. Millions of books. And you can go on the internet and you can search for this stuff. So the historical collections are becoming available online. And we're trying to say, okay, what do we want to do with all this stuff? Well, we said we have town and we have bond in electronic format. With Carl's help, we took all the information out of those books and into Past Perfect. The way we did it is we created a record in Past Perfect for each street address, and then we just cut and paste the descriptions out of Bond's book into the database. So we now have in Past Perfect the 250 homes that are more than, that were built before 1925. And that was a pretty good little treasure trove. But in the process of investigating this whole thing, what really blew me away is that the Historical Commission, both at the town level and at the state level, for the last 20 years has been documenting all the historic homes in Topsfield. And initially they were fairly small documents. But as they progressed, they hired consultants, and there are now very, very extensive documentation on many of our old homes, pulled together by professional researchers who looked at all our publications, the historical collections. All of that information is together, and thanks to your tax dollars and mine, they now all are online on the internet. So I can go in, or you can go in, to a database called Macris and plug in an address, and up will come a 5, 10, 15-page document of massive research on each of these homes. So we've taken, or we will, there are about 80% of the homes we're interested in are documented in the Macris database. So we've now, without a single keystroke, created a very comprehensive resource on those homes. So each of those homes now, you have 250 of them. For each home, what we'll do is we'll associate to that address as many images as we can find. And what we want to do is to show you a progression. In this case, we're talking about the Capeman House. What does it look like today? What did it look like 20 years ago? What did it look like 100 years ago? Whatever information we have, we can link to that record, and all of this becomes available to you. Past Perfect also allows you to track the people. So we'll know, after some more research, who has lived in each of these homes. We have, whatever it is, 8 or 10 people we've identified who lived in the partial Capeman House. Now for each of those people who we've identified, Past Perfect gives you the ability to create a biographical form, which is really a genealogical form, and we can expand that. So if you think about, if you have 250 homes, and I don't know, 5 or 6 or 8 people who lived in each of those homes, that would be the core of this genealogical pool that we're pulling together. And the library has done an interesting project that if that person died and was interred in Topsfield, they have a database where they scan the cemetery records, and I'll show you what all this looks like. And we can have, if they're buried in town, we can have an image of the gravestone or the inscription. So you see, we're starting to build a tremendous amount of information about each address. And we think it even gets better. One of the things we want to do for each address is to show you where that is. What does it look like? What's that? And we can do that from current maps. And again, we'll show this to you quickly. There are digital maps that the town has of what it is today, and you can run around town and see every house. Some of you know about Google Earth. what that looks like, but you can get a satellite picture of any piece of property. And then, again, to my amazement, there are very detailed maps of 1910 and 1872 that show every house. And again, those are digitized and those are sitting up there on the internet. So you see, all of this information already exists, and all we really have to do is manage it. The other really nice thing about Past Perfect is that you can link a record to any type of information, any format. So if you have a document, a Word, Excel, PowerPoint, if it's audio, video, a website, any source of information, you can link to this record. The library will be the first stop to find historical information. It pretty much is today. People who are looking for information don't call the Historical Society because primarily we won't answer the phone. We don't have any staff. And so that's the first place to go. We're working and have with Jackie and folks there. And the idea is that people would initially come to the library. There are lots of resources there and lots of new resources that we're building. And then if there's some reason why people can only get information from the historical records group, then we can make an arrangement to come in and do that. Now some of the library resources, I'm sure you've been in the Topsfield room, and there's all kinds of information that's been collected there. We've shared our collections together, and the Historical Society has filled in several voids that were in the library's collection, because the feeling is that's where the primary information ought to be. So if we had some records that they didn't, we've given them to them, and that's up in the library. Wendy and people have created a series of internet genealogical search capabilities by subscribing to different databases. They have the town cemetery database. And what's really exciting to me is you'll get a view of Past Perfect. We're actually going to move Past Perfect into the library as a public kiosk, meaning that anybody can go in and play with it and find information and extract information. This is what Past Perfect looks like on its main screen. I'll give you a little bit of a look at that, but when we access the information about Topsfield history, you can either access it by street address, which really isn't very common. Most people want to know a name, so we need to build a way that you can just type in a name and find out, is there any information associated with that? The big question is, how do you manage all this information? You know, it's all sitting in a database. People who want to have access to it aren't used to that type of information. So what we're doing is we're taking all of this information and putting it in a big bucket. And some of you know what's a PDF file is really a way of managing information. But everything, whether it's audio, video, whatever, will be thrown into this one file. So all we really have to do is give you access to that one file, and inside it is all this other stuff. So we've built sort of a format. We already have about 25 different pieces of information, types of information. And the good thing about a PDF is you can print it, you can search it, you can email it, but you can't change it. So very often when you have a lot of information, you'd like to print a copy, because one of the things that might be in there is a link to a website that you're interested in. Well, you print that document, take it home, then you can go into that website on your own. We've broken down this project into some manageable phases. And the very first phase will be historical district. Now, you may be aware that the Historical Commission has responsibilities for managing old properties, and they've created a historical district, which is sort of a gerrymandered figure of downtown. And every building in that district has certain restrictions or certain things that they have to be aware of. But when we looked at the 250 homes, this was the highest priority because there are a lot of old homes there, but there's also needs that the Historical Commission has to make sure people are aware of where they are. So that's phase one. There are about 21 homes in the before 1925 net that we'll be gathering here. The second phase is another group of maybe 16 homes, and this is a result of the Historical Commission's effort. And there's this whole project around National Register of Historic Places. Let me read you a little bit. This is a brochure that they put together. The National Register is the nation's official list of buildings, districts, sites, structures, and objects which retain their historical character and are important to our local, state, or national records. The National Register was established under the National Historic Preservation Act of 1966 and is administered by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Historical Commission. The River Road Cross Street District was recognized as examples of farms and rural retreats. This came out of a lot of the extensive research that was done on Topsfield's properties. So there are 16 or so homes, and again, if you go down Cross Street, down Hill Street, and up River Road, this is an area where these particular homes have been identified and researched in detail. So this will be a second phase that we'll go to. A third phase, and then it will keep on going. We're taking those properties that have the most documentation on them first. So there was a major project in town looking at what they called historic farms and rural retreats. And that looked at 40 or 50 homes. Each of those is documented in this database called Massachusetts Cultural Resource Information System, MACRIS. So already up online, we're talking here, the properties at 116 Boston Street, which is Witch Hill. People are familiar with that? There are 15 pages of research and text and images on that one property in this database. So we will link this to our Past Perfect database. Now, if you just, when you get a chance, look at this display over here. In October, the same group of people, Historical Commission, the Mapping Committee, all that, put together an exhibit at the library, which some of you may have seen, the Topsfield's Agricultural Heritage. And we looked at a timeline, and then we gave a lot of information. One of the exhibits there was this piece of this property at Witch Hill. And Jack Armitage did a fantastic job of researching all kinds of information about the history of the people there, all the images. And I've been involved in these kinds of things before. And unfortunately what happens is the day that the exhibit is over, all this information falls off the edge of the earth. There's no way to go back and collect it. But this is a perfect example where all of this information can be linked to that piece of property, so that if somebody is interested in learning about that, 15 years from now, all of the work that Jack did will be available in an easily identified format. So, we've done a lot about the library. Past Perfect will be in the library, the research is there. But what about people who can't come to Topsfield? We'd like to make this information available to them. This is where I get into my vision, meaning, who knows if you could really do this? But we're actually prototyping a lot of this information. And Jim McDougall, who is in town, is a master of digital mapping. And this is what we're trying to do. The first focus will be on Past Perfect, because we need to manage that information. But now we want to take that same information and make it available to the world. We're going to use the Historical Society website to deliver information over the internet. And our website is topsfieldhistory.org. We'll use digital maps to show the location of all homes and allow users to search those maps. We'll highlight a home on the map for which there is this historical address profile, this big bag of information. You click on the map, and up comes all of this information. It really can happen. We want to allow users to search by a person's name. So again, we'll have a list of everyone for whom we have in the genealogy database. If you pick that name, it will show you the address where that person lived. You go to that address, and out pops this great big bag of information. And if we're really clever, we'll be able to do this with 3 historical views. We'll show you what does Topsfield look like today, and where are the homes and all that good stuff. We'll go back to 1910, and we'll show you what it looked like. And after this, if you want to come up and look at this first panel, this is really a panel of downtown Topsfield in 1910 that shows every house. Let me just turn this down a bit. And there are 6 or 8 maps of this size. These are up on the internet right now. They have been digitized. So you can go on your computer and you can literally walk all over Topsfield as if it were 1910, and you'll see every house and every barn and every road. And that. So this is the map that we hope to have up on the internet of the current view of homes in Topsfield. If you look at this, all these open outlines are existing houses, and this is basically as of today. We're showing here the historical district, and the highlighted houses are the antique houses in the historic district for which we have information that will be linked to that house. 100 years ago, Topsfield looked like this. We're showing again an overlay of the historical district, and the yellow are structures that were here 100 years ago. You may notice that this is not the town library. It wasn't built then. This is a house that was subsequently moved when the Civil War monument was built. And then lastly, we have an atlas from 1872. And again, you can find the Parson Capon House, what at that point was a hotel. You'll see here the town hall has not yet been built. So again, the idea that we want to be able to present several different views in time of the homes in Topsfield. But what's the vision for Past Perfect? This is really quite a strategic view of what we're trying to do. We've talked about having Past Perfect available to the public in the library and a public kiosk. And that first phase will pretty much deal with the Historical Society's records. We've brought in some of the Historical Commission's records and some of the library's information. So in the initial phase of this, this is the information that we'll be bringing together. But there's a great deal more of other sources of historical information in town. The town hall has extensive archives. And thanks to a fellow named Jack Long, who spent countless hours digging through the town hall archives, he's cataloged it. A lot of that information was put on microfilm, and now a lot of that information has been put on the DVD. We want to be able to link that huge source of information to the other information that we're already building. You may be surprised to learn that both the town and the Historical Society have sent a fair amount of the town's historical records to the Peabody Essex Museum's Phillips Library. We did that so that years ago that those items would be protected and cataloged. Technically, we still own that material, but those are physically sitting in Salem. And again, we'd like to bring all of that information into Past Perfect. There are a few documents, very critical documents, that are at the Boxford Document Center and at the Ipswich Library, and again, we need to know where those are. And as we get this into a fully mature mode, the churches have information that's critical. Now remember, what we're trying to do is just put together a great big index that points to the source of the information. We're not naive enough to think that we're going to be able to scan all these documents and you can pull up individual records. But if you put in a topic, we'll tell you that there is information relating to that series of words at the Historical Society, maybe the Town Hall, maybe in Peabody Essex. So this is the vision of where we're going. So we talk about Past Perfect being a super index. It points to the source of the desired historical information, regardless of where that is. This project won't happen without volunteers. We spent 2 or 3 years in the strategy of what we wanted to do and in developing the technologies to allow it to happen. But now we need people who are willing to work with us and make it happen. There are many different roles. For those people who are interested in genealogy and research, we need to research who the people were who lived in the homes, and then we need to create genealogical profiles of those early residents. The library's been working with us, and they'll set up a training workshop and help people find the resources so that we can pull that information together. If you like to do detective work, a number of homes have moved, sometimes more than once. A number of homes that are on those early maps no longer exist. We need to dig through the information and know where those homes have ended up and be able to reference people to information even though that house may no longer be where it appears on the map. We'll be scanning documents and images. The Historical Society has purchased some high-end equipment so that we can do the job right, but there is work involved in physically doing that. And some data will have to be entered into the Past Perfect database. So I'm hoping that people will contact me, Bill Whiting at www.whiting@comcast.net. I think this is going to be a very exciting project. It's going to last for quite a while. But honestly, Topsfield will be a leader in the management of historical information. I'm aware of what a lot of other communities are doing, and no one is doing this level of effort to try to pull together the town's historical information. What I'd like to do is leave this PowerPoint presentation and give you 3 quick demos. One, we've talked about the historical address profile, that package of information. We'll show you what's actually going to be there. That's information that will be available from Past Perfect if you come to the library, or much of it will be available to anybody, anywhere from the internet. We'll show you a little bit about digital maps and show you the information that will be available through those digital maps on the internet. And lastly, we'll give you a demonstration of Past Perfect. What does that database really look like, and how can you pull information out of it? I think you'll be amazed at the capabilities that already exist. So if you give me a couple minutes, I have to switch to the computer. So I'll be back in just a few minutes, and we'll go through those 3 demos. We want to show you what this bag of information would look like. So there are several different ways to get it. Either you can go into Past Perfect and ask for it. You can go on the internet to a map, find a house that's highlighted, hit that house, and out comes this information. If you want a person, you go down to the person's name, they give you an address, you pick it up. This is the bag of information. And this one is an example for the Parson Capon House, and let's hope we can continue on. So the black is really a preformed structure. So for every house, there'd be an address, a historical name, a year built. So everything in black is sort of a standard entry. And then blue is the information we have for that house. So address, One Howlett, the historic name, the year it was built. Hopefully you come up with an image. And then each house by the Historical Commission has certain information or certain characteristics that have been given to it. So this house is a National Historic Landmark, which is a very unusual structure. So it's in the Local History District. It's in the National Registry District. It is identified as a specific property, and there are preservation restrictions applied to it. So whatever those characteristics are for each house, we would have that. This is the link to Mattress, and we give you here, if you printed this information out, because you were interested and you wanted to go home and play with it, this is the address to the Mattress database. The blue is the ID number for this home, and what gets printed out is whatever information is in the database. In this case, the Parson Capon House was done many years ago, so there's only 4 or 5 pages of data. But if you do this on the 116 Boston Street, you get 15 pages of data. This is Google Earth. This is really a satellite, and all you have to do is download a free Google Earth and put in an address, and then you literally can fly around. You can zoom all over the place and see what it looks like, bring it in, bring it out. In many cases, you can drive down the road, and you can actually see a 360-degree panorama of the territory within 100 yards. So this is just some of the information that we're trying to present for each house. This is what's available there. Oh, that's not working either. Okay. This is the current tax map. Let's try this again. Okay. So we're starting to home in on the Parson Chapin house. So the tax maps are actually on the town website. If you go to topsfield-ma.gov, in the left-hand column it says tax maps, and this is a level of detail. See, this is the Parson Chapin house. Here's the barn you're in. They even have the little shoemaker's house that's back here. This is all a digital record that is extremely accurate, that's used by the town. This is the 1910 atlas. And again, the level of detail is amazing, but this just shows you this is the Parson Chapin house, and then every other building in town is shown here. This just gives you an idea of where is this piece of property, what other buildings were there at the time, how much open space was there, what was here, which was, obviously the town library is not here at this point. And then there's one other look at history. This is the map from 1872, and again, hard to believe, but every house in Topsfield in 1872 is shown on this map at these different locations. So it's really amazing how much stuff there is out there that's already put together. Item 11 is the description, and this is just what Carl brought in from Bond's book. So he cut and pasted whatever Bond said about this address, and he has a page or so of it. But what we found, particularly on the internet, anybody ever heard of Wikipedia? It's really an encyclopedia that you can put your own information in. And if you put information in that somebody thinks is wrong, they put their information in and correct yours, and then someone corrects that, and then someone corrects that. So what happens is you get eventually the right information. Now, there are many people who pointed out that there are a number of omissions and errors in Bond's book. So there will be a space here for people who have a process, haven't figured out how that's going to work yet, but over time, we can correct the information that's in Bond's book, and we can add additional information that would be appropriate. We'll also put in here whether that house has moved or whether it no longer exists. And the old folks did move houses around often. We said that Past Perfect has a genealogical profile. So we will have, this is really just a very basic. It just starts with, born and died parents and children and that kind of thing. But the database can be expanded to any type of elements that we want. So we can build our own database, and this will be available for everyone who we've identified. So that's Chapin. Said that the library has a database of burial cards. Now, you may not be excited about burial cards, but they actually tell you who's in the plot, who else is there, when were they interred. This is the town's record about every grave in Topsfield. And this is really important to people who are doing genealogical research. The other side of it shows you, okay, here are where the people are buried in that family plot. So it's really quite difficult to go find graves in the cemetery today. There are some maps and things, but this will help you get there if that's where you're going. And of course, we can show you an image of the gravestone and the epitaph and all the rest. So this is giving you an idea of some of the information that we're collecting. This was the genealogical profile for Priscilla, and the important thing here is that Bond only identified 3 people who lived in the Parson Capon house prior to 1925. We worked with the library and Wendy and her folks, and they've developed a process for investigating who lived in what home. Now, they've looked at all the different resources, and there's a process and there's a way of recording this information that we can use. And when they did that for the Parson Capon house, they found 6 other people who had lived in that house who were not referenced by town or bond. Okay? So this now just greatly expands the number of people in the genealogical database. We have the capability of associating unique information into this bag of information. Now, it turns out that there's an unpublished genealogy of the Capon and Appleton family that Wendy has never seen. It just surfaced from some folks who had been members, and the woman has been working in this for years and years. This is a 24-page document that lists all the descendants of Capon's grandfather. And it goes on and on and on. This, as far as I know, is not available anywhere else in the world. And so this is the example of one way that we can capture unique information. Now, we probably want to make that information available to the library in a separate form. But this just gives you an idea of how you can start associating information with what we're building. That same volunteer effort just listed by Alpha all the people who are in that 24-page list. So there are lots of ways of getting at the information that is here. The same kind of thing for Priscilla. And then the last piece of this has to do with the Historical Commission. It really helps you know whether this particular property is in the historic district, which it is. It's not in the River Road district. It's included in the National Register of Historic Places. There's been paperwork on it, so it's eligible for certain things. There are demolition delay issues for this building. So this pulls together all the Historical Commission's interest with old homes. And it references the town website where all of that information is explained, and all of the research information about these homes are available on the website. And then we just would encourage people, because remember, people are going to get this who are sitting in China, because they've gone on the internet, they've come to our website, and they've asked for this big bag of information. What we say is you really ought to come to the town library, because they have a lot of additional information. They can get you into Google Earth. You can borrow DVDs from the Historical Society about our archives. You can get into Past Perfect. So this is just sort of a pitch to make a personal visit to the library, because these are some of the things you're going to see. So then you do 2 more quick things. Digital maps. It's difficult to really conceive of what we're talking about. Partially because it's hard to see it. But, as I said, the town has spent a great deal of money and digitized the entire town. This is accurate to, within 2 feet or 5 inches or something or other. This is primarily used today by the assessor's office. At some point, there may be a lot of assessor information associated with this. The idea of digital maps is you can have layers of information. So the highway department uses the basic map, and they overlay on it information about bridges. And the water department uses the basic map and overlays septic systems and hydrants and all the rest. So right now, this is what exists for the town. And you can go into and look at every building. And that's the basis for a lot of the work that we're doing. This was the 1910 map. And there are a couple of things that I want to reference here. Since I had a little computer problem. So this is what Topsfield looked like 100 years ago. And when you start managing information over different periods of time, looking at houses, it gets very complicated because in the old days there were no street addresses. Everybody knew where good old John Gould lived, but all of Town's book doesn't have a single street address in it. So we had to go in and identify those. And also, houses have been moved and demolished. So there are houses in the historic district, and this is this little purple line that's hard to read here. There are houses here that were built before 1910, but they're not shown on the map. Now, why is that? That's because if you look on the current map, there's a house at 130 North Street that was built in 1876, but it's not here on the map. What you find out is down here, where the shopping center was built, whatever, the 50s or something, that house was in the way. So that house got moved up here. So you have to know those things in order to be able to know what the history of those houses are and to display that information. And if you look down here, what you might think is the library. This is not the library because the library wasn't here in 1910. This is a house that was built in 1756. And a little after 1910, the town decided to put the Civil War monument in. This house had to go. So this house was moved down to 11 High Street. Well, half of it was to 11 High Street. The other half was moved to 17 High Street. And then it's not here on 1910 because the piece that was moved was added to a new house. And 11 isn't here because when the library expansion came, that house had to move a second time, and that crept out to Route 97 over the border of Boxford River. So it gets a little complicated when you're trying to understand how all this stuff fits together. Let me just give you a couple more of these and then I'll release you. This is what we're trying to do with an internet-based map. And there are lots of little challenges here, but Jim McDougall is struggling ahead on this. The ultimate is you'll be able to go in and click on that and come up with a bag of information. Just give you a little bit of background. This is the red are houses from 1910. Everything else is a current map. So if you look at this, which is really the Parson Capon house. Let's see if I can get here for you. You look at the map below, which is the current town map. See this little blue square? That's the barn. And this little black, or the other square is the cobble, the shoeman's house. And in some cases, we've actually, you can look at the shape of the house 100 years ago. It's overlaid the shape of what it is today, and you often see the house below is bigger because additions have gone to it. But this is the level of technology that's going on. In order to get to the point where you can click on a house, there's a lot of activity that needs to be done. But what we will do is we'll have for you an index. So this is phase 1. The PID number is just a unique number for every property. So if you're looking for information, you may know the address. So if you know the address of 17 High Street, you can go to the map and find it. Or if you're just cruising around and you're looking at all the different dates and you're interested in houses of a particular period, you can collect those. Or the historic name, which is given by the Historical Commission, often are the early residents of that. So just by scanning the historic names, you may find your family name or some other group that you're interested in. These are just ways of getting into the information. And one last little piece. I want to show you past perfect very quickly, if it's still here. Okay. Now, I said past perfect does all kinds of things things. We're only asking it to do certain things. We're really asking it to help us with our management of our collections. So we have a collection of archives. This is all the stuff that's sitting in that back room. And what was done a generation ago is they looked at everything and cataloged it and put it into like boxes of information. So the way we organize things are by boxes and folders. So if you go in the room, there are 100 boxes, and each of them has a whole bunch of folders in it. And pretty much we can describe what's in each of those folders. So if you see the narrative, you say, oh, I want to find out about that. You go running in, pull out that box, pull out the folder, and there's that stuff. It's not that we've scanned that material. It's that we've described the information that's in there, and you can go find it. Well, this just happens to be one record, and in box 800 folder 1 are the genealogy notes from Dow when he was doing all his research. So all of these families have research done in that box. And you'll see that we have a lot of it. So these are all different boxes. Every box has a folder on these families. And this is just one of the sources of information that we can pull together. So that's what's in the archive collection. In the object collection, this is everything that's in the Parson-Capen house and here. There are over 700 objects that have been identified. We know when they were purchased, what the value was, a description of them, if they're linked to any particular people. And again, the docents and the curators of a generation ago collected all this information initially on 3x5 cards. Somebody, thank the Lord, put it into a computer. Carl came along and took that shoebox of 3x5 cards that had probably a floppy disk or something on it, brought all of that into Past Perfect. So now these are tools for the curators and the docents to manage the information that we have in our collections. Thank to Al Musso, who's working, sitting in the audience. He has come in, and this is the only information we had to hand enter. He's entered over 700 entries on books and bound documents, so that all of our information is not quite at the level of the library of Dewey Decimal, but it's all in there in a format that we can search. And I thought one of the clever things we did is we've taken some of our major resources, like Dow's book, and Dow's book is really the basic source of information about everything about Topsfield. We just took that index, scanned it, put it into Past Perfect. So this is the index, and every word here is searchable. So if I want to go in and find something about a person, I ask Past Perfect, now tell me about this person. And if that person's name appears in Bond's index, in Dow's index, in the historical collections, it's going to say, oh, you want to know something about Joseph Chaplin? Look at page 401. So that's a nice, cheap way of getting an awful lot of information. And then we have photos. And photos are really, were intended primarily to be the collection of images that you have. Let's see. Let's see if I can find it. Okay, good. So this is Past Perfect's photo collection for this property, which we're using for all this bag of information. So there you can get at that pile of information here very easily. But there are things that you can't get unless you come to Past Perfect. And there are a couple of those things. One is all kinds of associated data. So we'll have, this is the historical address, if you want. We'll have a video tour of Parson-Capen House. So you can actually click on here, It'll take you through all the rooms of the house. It will show you all the furniture. It will give you an idea of what it would be like to come and work with the docents and go through that. We've published a number of other documents. The Historical Society spent about $10,000 a couple of years ago with a consultant to do an in-depth analysis of the Parson Capen House's structure. And there were 11 questions that we asked that have plagued people for the last 200 years. Was it built as a single structure? Were the windows the same? All of these really technical questions were asked and answered in this document. And to me, the graphics are just startling. So the people who put this together physically looked at every beam, every piece of wood. Oh, we're not doing too much today. Let's see if we can get back out of it. The fact is, that's a document that very few people have seen, even though it resides in the library. So anybody who is really an interest in architecture, or particularly the Parson Capen House, this is a treasure trove of information that they don't know about. All this will do is say, this is the kind of information that's here. Since you're here at the library, go ask Wendy to get the book. So we can put all this kind of information sitting right here. We can also have a video, we'll have a video tour of the barn, and we'll show you the construction. Where did it come from? How was it built? Who built it? All that kind of stuff. Show you one more. Some of you know that you're in the Joseph Gould barn right now. But that barn actually resided at 129 Washington Street. I happen to be the next door neighbor of the Schiffs who donated this barn. I was walking the dog the other day, and Mike was out in his front yard, and I started telling him a little bit about this project. He said, oh, that's cool. Did you know that we had somebody do their master's thesis on our house? I said, no. He said, oh, you'd like a copy? I said, yeah, I'd like a copy of that. I called Wendy and asked her about it. She said, no, we've never seen that. So this is a document that has some really key information about this barn and about the house where this barn was located, and about a lot of other information. What are you doing things funny today? That's all right. When you look at the appendices, you know, there's genealogy information. So all I'm trying to really help you understand is that there's a lot of information about these places that already exist. And what we're finding already, and this is just one example, there are significant voids in what the Historical Society has and knows about, and other voids in the library, and by bringing together, we're now sharing them. So that this is very important, I think, for the whole question of where we're headed. Now, one of the other things that I'll just give you quick is we can manage images. So these are images that were associated with the Parson Capen House. And we haven't done a really good job of cataloging these yet. But you want 10 images, you want 50 images, you want 100 images, they'll all fit right here. And each one has the opportunity for you to put in information. Where did it come from? What are the inference? You know, what information is there? You can link information to all of these. Who are those people? There's an old house. That looks very much like the shoemaker's house that's there today. So, lots of opportunities. And I think that's, let me see if that was the end of this first piece. Oh no, I want to do one other thing. If you're interested in genealogy, this is the place to come. Think about it, this database has whatever we put in for genealogy, but all these other records can link to that same name. So if there are, I don't know, 1 million words in the database, you can search those 1 million words. And you can say, show me every time this word comes up and show me where it came up. So it may have come up as a photo. It may have come up because that person gave us an andiron 50 years ago. It may have come up because there's an archive about it. But this will find any word that's in there. So one of the ways you can search is by people. And these are all the people that are currently in past perfect. You're just going by the alpha character. And I want to go look for old Robert Andrews. Now, Robert Andrews, it just says there are 2 archives that relate to him. But in order to get on this list, somebody has to look at a piece of information and associate it with a given person. So that doesn't happen for everything. So there are 2 archives that have been personally linked to Robert Andrews. But there is a lot of information that you'd miss if that's all you look for. So I'm going to go in by keyword, and I want to look for Robert. Gotcha. Let's try it again. Whoop, that's not what I want. Okay, Robert Andrews. Anybody who Robert Andrews is? He was one of the old guys. Okay, now when I'm searching, I now find information in archives, which are the A's, in the library, in photos. So anytime that name appears, and nobody had to associate it with that name, we find it. So let me just do a couple of things. There's an archive here, and it tells me that the description is a miscellaneous 18th century legal papers. But let me go look at that record. So this is in box 10, folder 8. And again, it just gives me some information. But this is what the prior generation cataloged, is they wrote this little description in this folder, and now we've searched for that information. If we want to look at this, this says Robert Andrews genealogy list. Now let's go look at that. Now this is unusual. I put this in as sort of an example. Normally we don't scan a specific document. You know, at some point we may find we have some really critical things that we want. But this is box 10, folder 8, archive 2D, and I can go in and look at that document, and I can go in and actually read it. So this just gives you the capability, if you so choose, although it's a huge amount of work, to take a document, put it into a scanner, make a file of it, prepare a description of it. That's not really what we're doing. What we're really doing is just saying, in this folder is this type of information about this family. So I don't want you to get the idea that we have scanned 1 million documents. Okay, just a couple more here. We want to look at, remember we said that we had put together, when we looked at the archives, these are Dow's family notes on genealogy. Well, it found Robert Andrews. Okay. So all this would tell you is when you put that name in, that says, hey, there's a bunch of notes about that family in Dow's box of notes. It's just finding all of this information, regardless of where it is. And then just one last one. This is Dow's book, and we said we put in the indexes. Well, this found it. So Robert Andrews is in Dow's index, and if you page down through the index, you'll find it. So really what we're trying to portray is that this database is very powerful and very easy to use, and that an awful lot of information already exists, and it's sitting here. Maybe pull the lights back up. What you see here is just a random display of images in our collection. And one of the tasks we want to do at some point is to catalog those better. And what you really do is you look at each image and you sort of write down in the computer what's in that image. You might have said horse, or cart, or farm, or these are really key words. If you do that, and you end up with 1,000 images, if for some reason you want to put together a presentation on farming, you just put in the word farm, and that will show you all the images that you've associated with that name. So there's lots of additional work that we want to do to pull this stuff together. But this just gives you an idea. Let me just review my 4 points and see if we came close to some of them. Over the years, many people have collected and cataloged Topsfield history information, and much of that is available in digital form. You've seen that. The challenge is to know where that data is and what is related to it. Past Perfect finds all that. The technology needed to share exists, and we're demonstrating and we're prototyping a lot of that. And as we make data available and people share information of common interest, the information becomes more complex and more accurate. And hopefully you've seen that. So that's what we're doing in their spare time. It's not going to happen without volunteer help. We need volunteer help primarily. The first step will be to do some research. And the research is who lived in this house and what's the genealogical information about that person. And the good news is Wendy has built sort of a process to do that and is willing to put together workshops and that sort of thing. So if we have some volunteers, it's not just a matter of looking at 1 or 2 books. You've got to look at a whole series of things, but they've already narrowed that list down. That's one area we need help in. We need help in researching moves, houses that have moved and houses that no longer exist. We've got to figure out how to deal with those. We'll have some data entry. We'll have some scanning requirements. So none of these are high-tech responsibilities. We've purchased some of the latest computer and scanning equipment, so we've got all the technology to do this. We have sort of a plan of how to go about it. So we really just need to start working with people and take small bites and initially try to get it for this Past Perfect product, have that available in the library, over time make this available on the internet, and we're working in that direction. No question. Dave? I hope that you enjoyed the presentation on Topsfield Antique Homes project. If you're interested in Topsfield history, I ask that you consider volunteering for this important project. We need people to research early residents and to prepare genealogical profiles of Topsfield's families. The library will conduct a training workshop to help these folks. We need to research homes that have moved or no longer exist. We need to scan documents and images. And we need to enter data into Past Perfect. I'd like to talk with you about how you can get involved. Please contact me at wwhiting@comcast.net, and I hope to be hearing from some of you.